Something is happening in Surulere, Lagos, that has already triggered accusations of political intimidation ahead of the 2027 elections. More than 50 campaign banners linked to the New Nigeria Democratic Congress, or NDC, and its Surulere 1 candidate, Dr. Adefolesai Adebomi, have reportedly been removed. And because Adebomi is campaigning alongside supporters of Peter Obi, the incident has quickly become part of the wider political conversation surrounding Peter Obi, opposition parties, and the 2027 election. But there is another detail that has made this story even more controversial. The candidate alleges that while her banners were removed, some APC campaign materials at the same locations were left untouched. So the big question is, was this simply enforcement of Lagos signage regulations, or was an opposition candidate being selectively targeted? Let's break down what we know. According to reports, Dr. Adefolesai Adebomi, the NDC candidate for the Surulere Federal Constituency 1 House of Representatives seat, raised an alarm after discovering that more than 50 of her campaign banners had been removed. She described the development as an act of political intimidation. Adebomi said the banners had been taken away by officials associated with the Lagos State Signage and Advertisement Agency, commonly known as LOSA. She also said the removal was carried out with a truck and security escorts. The locations she mentioned included areas such as Akorali, Ogonlona, Adelobu, and Shita. But there was another part of her allegation that attracted even more attention. She claimed that other political banners remained in some of the same locations. This is where the controversy really begins. Adebomi alleges that when she went around Surulere to inspect the locations, she noticed that her banners had been removed while some other political banners remained. She specifically questioned why banners belonging to other politicians could remain while hers were taken down. Her argument was simple. If the location violates the rules, shouldn't the same rule apply to everybody? That is the question at the center of her complaint. But it's important to make one distinction. The allegation of selective enforcement is coming from the candidate. It has not been independently established by the reports I found that LOSA deliberately targeted her because she is an opposition candidate. That distinction is important if we're going to discuss this story fairly. According to Adebomi's account, she contacted a LOSA spokesperson about the removal. She said she was told that the poles were Lagos government property and had been assigned to outdoor practitioners. In other words, the explanation presented to her was connected to signage control and ownership or allocation of the advertising spaces. That gives us another side of the story. Because if the banners were placed on spaces controlled by the government or allocated to registered outdoor advertising operators, there may be regulatory requirements governing what can be displayed there. The important question is therefore, were those rules applied equally to every political party? That is what needs to be established. Now let's clear up something that could easily become confusing. The reports describe Adebomi as an NDC candidate who is campaigning alongside Peter Obi and other NDC supporters. So this story is being discussed publicly as a Peter Obi-linked campaign banner controversy. But that does not necessarily mean every one of the more than 50 banners removed was personally a Peter Obi presidential banner. The reported complaint comes from Adebomi, the NDC candidate. For Surulere 1. That distinction matters because headlines can sometimes make a story sound simpler than it actually is. Campaign posters and banners may look like a small issue. But during an election season, visibility matters. Political parties use posters, billboards, banners, and social media to introduce candidates to voters. If one party's campaign materials disappear while another party's materials remain visible, that can create the perception that the electoral playing field is not equal. And perception matters. Even if officials believe they are simply enforcing signage rules, they need to apply those rules consistently. Otherwise, opposition parties can accuse the government of using public institutions against them. Adebomi has accused the APC-led Lagos government of intolerance toward opposition parties. Her argument is that if government officials remove opposition campaign materials while allowing APC materials to remain, it creates an unfair political environment. But again, we have to be careful. An allegation is not the same thing as a proven fact. The proper question is, can the Lagos government demonstrate that the same signage rules were applied to APC, NDC, and other parties in the affected areas? If yes, the government can provide evidence. If no, then questions about selective enforcement become much more serious. Surulere has already featured prominently in Nigeria's political history. During the 2023 election period, Peter Obi supporters held rallies in different parts of Lagos, including Surulere. Thousands of supporters participated in demonstrations across parts of the state at the time. So Surulere is not unfamiliar with Peter Obi's political movement. The latest banner controversy therefore comes against a background of intense political activity in the area. Adebomi has called for an investigation into the removal of her banners. She has also demanded what she describes as a fair contest. Her argument is that political competition should allow opposition parties to campaign without intimidation. She has reportedly said the NDC will not accept what she considers bullying and wants the party's national leadership to investigate the matter. That puts the responsibility on the relevant authorities to clarify exactly what happened. This is probably the most important question in the entire story. Were the banners properly authorized? Were the required signage fees paid? Were the banners installed in approved locations? Were the poles legally available for political advertising? And were the same requirements applied to APC and other parties? Until those questions are answered, it is difficult to conclusively say whether this was routine enforcement or political targeting. And that is why an investigation would be useful. Imagine two candidates. Candidate A follows every rule. Candidate B doesn't. If government removes candidate A's banners but leaves candidate B's banners untouched, that's clearly a problem. But imagine the opposite. Imagine both candidates violate the same rule and officials remove one set while leaving the other. That would also create a serious problem. The solution is simple. Apply the rules consistently and transparently. Political affiliation should not determine whether a campaign banner is allowed to remain. We are still some distance from the 2027 presidential election, but political activity is already intensifying. Peter Obi remains one of the major figures in Nigeria's opposition politics. The APC remains the ruling party. And new political alliances and parties are positioning themselves for the next election. That means disputes like this are likely to become more common. Every banner, every rally, every government decision, every campaign event, every controversial statement could become part of the larger 2027 political battle. Instead of allowing this controversy to become another political shouting match, the authorities should answer some straightforward questions. First, who ordered the removal? Second, what specific regulation justified the removal? Third, were the banners properly authorized? Fourth, were other political banners in the same locations compliant? And fifth, if similar banners from other parties violated the same rules, were they also removed? If the answers are clear, the controversy becomes much easier to understand. So here's what we know. A Surulere 1 NDC candidate, Dr. Adefolisai Adebomi, says more than 50 of her campaign banners were removed by officials associated with Lagos's signage agency. She alleges that her banners were selectively targeted while some APC banners remained. According to her account, a LOSA spokesperson explained that the poles were Lagos government property assigned to outdoor practitioners. The allegations have now triggered calls for an investigation and concerns about whether opposition parties are being given a fair campaign environment. But at this point, we should be careful with the conclusion. The allegation of political targeting has not been independently established. What needs to happen now is transparency. If the banners violated the rules, explain the rules. If they were properly authorized, explain why they were removed. And if other political parties had banners in the same locations, explain whether the same enforcement action was taken against them. Because in a democracy, the rules should not change depending on which political party is involved. And as Nigeria moves toward 2027, Nigerians will be watching closely. So what do you think? Was this simply enforcement of signage regulations, or should Lagos authorities investigate the allegation of selective removal? Drop your opinion in the comments. For more Nigerian political news, breaking headlines and analysis, subscribe.